The winter wind of Manhattan was particularly cruel that morning, slicing between the steel giants of Midtown and biting through Aaliyah Jones's thin coat as she sprinted across the plaza of the Hawkins Tower. Her breath fogged the air, her curls whipped behind her, and her fingers gloved, but still numb, clutched the worn folder containing her resume and a handful of sketches she had stayed up all night revising. She kept whispering to herself, "Don't be late. Today can't be another almost. Today has to be the day something finally changes." Because she knew 1 minute late, one misstep, one moment of hesitation, and people like her didn't get second chances in a place like New York. When she pushed through the revolving glass doors of Hawkins Group, the lobby marble floors, gold trim, a towering chandelier felt like stepping into another universe. Everyone around her moved with polished purpose. Designers in sleek black coats, executives glued to their phones, assistants balancing trays of coffees without spilling a drop. Aaliyah stood out instantly, not just because of her simple clothes, but because of the raw determination radiating from her eyes. She forced her legs to move, weaving through the crowd toward the elevators, praying she wouldn't look like she didn't belong. She pressed the call button. The elevator chimed, and when the doors slid open, her heart sank. The cabin was already packed, no overflowing. Bodies squeezed shoulder to shoulder, the smell of perfume and cologne mixing with the cold dampness from winter coats. An elderly man, slightly hunched and holding a wooden cane, stepped toward the elevator, his movements slow but polite. Before he could enter, a tall woman in a designer coat thrust her hand out like a barrier. "Sir," she snapped, "the elevator is full. Wait for the next one." Her tone wasn't concerned. It was dismissive, irritated, entitled. The old man gave a small, apologetic smile. "It's all right. Actually," the woman interrupted sharply, eyes narrowing, "you're blocking the door." The people inside shifted uncomfortably. No one said anything. No one even looked at the old man. Aaliyah felt something hot coil in her chest. She didn't even decide to speak, it simply erupted out of her. "Excuse me," she said, stepping forward, "but he was here first." The woman swung around, eyes wide with disbelief. "What did you just say?" "I said," Aaliyah repeated, voice steady, despite the tremor in her hands, "he can get in. You can wait." A few gasps scattered through the elevator. Some people stared at Aaliyah as if she had just punched a senator. Others looked away quickly, as though siding with the poor girl in second-hand boots might contaminate their careers. The woman Anna, though Aaliyah didn't know that yet, let out a cold, humorless laugh. "Do you even know who I am?" Aaliyah lifted her chin. "No, but I know he's older and he deserves basic respect." "Respect?" Anna scoffed, leaning in with a sneer. "Look at you. You're lucky they even let you walk into this building. Don't talk to me about respect." The elevator doors slid open again as people shifted to make room. Aaliyah didn't budge. She held her ground, her heartbeat pounding loud in her ears. The old man looked at her, surprised, touched, and a little embarrassed. "It's all right, dear. Don't trouble yourself." "No trouble," Aaliyah said softly. "Please go ahead." And she gently held his arm, guiding him inside. The elevator was silent, thick with tension. A few people exchanged looks of annoyance, as if the old man had stolen precious seconds from their very important lives. The doors closed. But before they fully sealed shut, someone walking past glanced toward the commotion. Ethan Hawkins wasn't supposed to be in that lobby. He rarely stepped foot in the public entrance. There were private elevators, hidden corridors, executive-only routes that kept him shielded from the world. Yet today, he had come down because security alerted him that his grandfather, William Hawkins, had arrived early. The moment Ethan walked through the wide lobby and caught sight of the scene by the elevator, something in him stopped. Not his footsteps, Those continued in their usual calm, controlled pace, but his mind froze, sharpening like a camera lens, focusing on one subject, only the young woman standing between Anna and the old man like a shield. Her posture wasn't polished. Her clothes weren't expensive. But the bravery, the instinctive, uncalculated courage hit Ethan like a fist to the chest. He didn't react externally. His expression remained indifferent, even bored to any onlooker. But his eyes lingered, troubled, intrigued, unsettled. Who is she, he wondered. And why do I feel anything at all Ethan Hawkins did not feel? Not in the way other people did. Emotions were distractions. Attachments were liabilities. Romance chaotic. But watching this stranger defend an old man while an entire elevator stayed silent made something almost forgotten stir inside him. A flicker of warmth or danger. He wasn't sure which. A few seconds later, the elevator doors reopened on the next floor and people shuffled out. The old man stepped onto the hallway, followed by Aaliyah, who gave him a shy smile. "Are you all right, sir?" "Perfectly fine," he said, placing a gentle hand over hers. "Thank you, young lady. People don't stand up like that anymore. What's your name? I'd like to remember it." She hesitated. Nobody important usually asked for her name. "Aaliyah," she finally answered. "Aaliyah Jones." His eyes softened with genuine appreciation. "Beautiful name. I'll remember it." As they stepped into the hall, Ethan arrived from the opposite side. He moved with the practiced calm of someone used to being obeyed. Tall, sharp-featured, impeccably dressed, his presence cutting through the air before he even spoke. When Aaliyah saw him approach, she immediately stepped aside, instinctive deference to power. But William's eyes twinkled with mischief. "Ethan," he said, tapping his cane lightly on the floor. "You won't believe what just happened." Ethan offered his grandfather a steadying arm, but kept his gaze drifting toward the young woman standing awkwardly to the side, clutching her resume like a shield. William beamed. "This young lady helped me. No hesitation, no fear." The others didn't move a muscle. Ethan's eyes met Aaliyah's for a fraction of a second. Warm brown meeting icy blue. And something inside him shifted, subtle but undeniable. William's smile turned sly, almost boyish. "Hire her." Ethan blinked. "Grandfather." "I'm serious," the old man insisted. "Bring her into the company. We need people like this." "We have protocols," Ethan replied, voice calm, but tinged with surprise. "Recruitment isn't hire. Her." William said each word slowly, firmly. "That's an order." Aaliyah gasped softly. "Oh no, sir. You don't have to. I'm only here for an interview, and I'm not even sure I qualify." Ethan lifted a hand, silencing her without a word. Not rudely, just naturally, like someone accustomed to commanding a room. "You're here for an interview." "Yes," she said, trying not to shrink under his gaze. "For a temporary assistant position." Ethan studied her carefully, the way she stood her ground despite being nervous, the sincerity in her voice, the raw honesty in her eyes. And he hated that something in him responded to it. "Don't be ridiculous," he told himself. "It's just gratitude for helping grandfather, nothing more." But he knew he was lying. William tapped Ethan's shoulder. "Don't overthink it, boy. Sometimes the right people appear in front of you for a reason." Aaliyah wished the floor would swallow her whole. She didn't want special treatment. She didn't want pity. She said quietly, "I should go. I don't want to cause any trouble." But William held her hand again. "You didn't cause trouble, dear. You reminded this building that kindness still exists." And Ethan's stoic, disciplined, untouched by most human interaction, couldn't pull his eyes away from her. Something had shifted. A small, dangerous crack beneath the armor he had built for years. It unsettled him deeply. When Aaliyah finally walked down the hall toward the interview room, Ethan watched her go, jaw tightening. William chuckled knowingly. "She has spirit, doesn't she?" Ethan didn't answer. Couldn't. His pulse annoyingly had quickened. His usually steady breath felt uneven. His thoughts refused to behave. Who is she? He wondered again. Irritation and fascination tangled together. And why did one moment feel like the beginning of something I can't control? He didn't like the feeling, but he also couldn't look away. Aaliyah's palms were damp by the time she reached the 42nd floor. The hallway outside the interview room buzzed with the low hum of ambition. Footsteps echoing heels striking hushed voices, trading rumors about who would get the coveted assistant position. She could feel eyes sliding over her outfit, the clean but inexpensive blouse, the carefully patched coat. She held her folder close to her chest, like armor willing her heartbeat to slow, and reminding herself that she had faced worse things than judgmental stares. She had survived foster homes, graveyard shifts, and a city that pretended people like her were invisible. Surely she could handle an interview. When the door opened, she stepped inside, smoothing her curls with a trembling hand. The room was sleek, all glass panels and chrome furniture. A long table at the center, where 3 interviewers sat waiting. But her breath caught when she recognized the woman in the middle. Anna, the same woman whose entitlement had sparked the morning's conflict. Now she sat straight-backed and elegant, her expression softening into a slow, venomous smile. Aaliyah realized too late that she had walked directly into a trap. "Name?" Anna asked, though her tone made it clear she already knew. "Aaliyah Jones," she answered, forcing her voice steady. Anna extended 2 manicured fingers toward the folder. Aaliyah handed it over, hopeful the work she had poured her soul into might speak louder than the tension in the room. But Anna didn't even flip it open. She let it rest under her palm, as though it were a damp napkin rather than months of effort. "I've reviewed enough applications today," she said coolly, "and based on what I've seen so far, you're not a fit for Hawkins' group." Aaliyah blinked, stunned. She hadn't even been questioned. The 2 other interviewers shifted awkwardly, clearly aware of what was happening, but unwilling to challenge Anna's authority. Aaliyah felt something squeeze painfully in her chest. Anger, humiliation, disbelief. But she swallowed it down, refusing to let her voice break. With respect, she said softly, "You haven't looked at my resume. There's no need." Anna's smile was razor thin. "We expect professionalism here. Composure, respect. This morning proved you lack those qualities." It felt like a slap, not because of the insult, but because of the blatant injustice. Still, Aaliyah held her head high. She had learned long ago that the world gave her nothing unless she fought for it. But before she could speak, Anna leaned forward, eyes gleaming. "You may go," she said. "We're done." Aaliyah stood slowly. Her throat tightened, but she forced herself not to cry. Not here. Not in front of someone who would enjoy it. She clutched her folder, turned toward the door, and nearly collided with a tall figure entering the room. Ethan. His presence bent the air, absorbing the attention of every person like gravity. He didn't even look at the interviewers at first. His gaze locked onto Aaliyah instantly. Shock flickered in his expression, not obvious enough for most people to notice, but enough for her stomach to twist. His voice was calm, but its edge cut clean through the room. "You." Aaliyah froze, every nerve bracing for impact. "You're the one who caused the commotion this morning?" he asked. The words weren't cruel, but they held power enough to make one of the interviewers stiffen, and Anna's smirk widen, as if she had already won. Aaliyah drew in a breath. She had expected this. Expected to be misunderstood, blamed, dismissed. She had lived her whole life preparing for moments like this. Instead of shrinking back, she met his eyes and said, "I didn't cause anything. I defended someone who needed help. If that makes me someone who causes commotion, then—" She lifted her chin. "I can accept that." The room fell silent. Ethan, for the first time that morning, looked genuinely taken aback. Her honesty hit him like a physical force. No groveling, no excuses, just simple conviction. Something in the back of his mind stirred again, the same tug he had felt in the elevator lobby, something he didn't want to name. Anna's voice sliced the quiet. "Mr. Hawkins, we were just dismissing this candidate. She's clearly not suitable." Ethan finally tore his gaze away from Aaliyah and turned toward the table. "How many candidates have you evaluated?" he asked. "A dozen," Anna said quickly. "And you believe this decision is objective?" His tone was unreadable. "Of course," she replied too quickly. But before anyone could say more, Ethan's phone vibrated. One glance at the screen, and his jaw tightened. "Excuse me," he murmured, stepping aside to answer. Aaliyah lowered her eyes, her heart sinking. Whatever chance she might have had was slipping through her fingers. She turned to leave quietly, hoping at least to exit the room with dignity. But just as she reached the door, Ethan's sharp voice floated behind her. "Yes, grandfather. No, I haven't made a decision yet." "What now?" "Grandfather. That's not how." He stopped abruptly. "Fine. I understand." When he hung up, he didn't move for a moment. His expression was a complex mix of reluctance, frustration, and something like disbelief, perhaps even mild awe at the audacity of the order he had just received. He looked at Anna. "Reverse your decision." Anna blinked. I'm sorry." "Hire her." His voice was cool, firm, final. The room went dead still. Aaliyah turned around, startled. Anna shot up from her chair. "Mr. Hawkins, with all due respect, she is not qualified. She was disruptive this morning. She's underdressed, and she clearly lacks the—" "My decision isn't up for negotiation," Ethan said, cutting her off without raising his voice. "But if you have an issue with the hiring process," he added lightly, "you're free to speak with the chairman. He's the one who requested her." He didn't say William Hawkins' name, but everyone in the room stiffened, as if a cold wind had swept through. No one dared defy the patriarch of the Hawkins empire. Anna's face flushed with a mix of fury and humiliation. She pressed her lips together, then sank back into her seat like a defeated general retreating from battle. Ethan turned toward Aaliyah. "Report to the secretary department tomorrow morning. They'll assign you tasks." Aaliyah opened her mouth, closed it, then managed a breathless, "Yes, sir." He held her gaze for a beat longer than necessary. Not a smile, not warmth. Just a level, unblinking attention that made her pulse race for an entirely different reason. Then he turned away to review the stack of resumes beside Anna, as though the matter were resolved. Aaliyah backed toward the door, her legs trembling with shock. She wasn't sure if she should thank him or apologize, or simply run before someone changed their mind. But when she glanced at Anna, whose glare burned hotter than a live wire, she realized she had stepped into a battlefield she knew nothing about. As she exited the room, she heard Anna hiss under her breath, "This isn't over." Aaliyah pretended not to hear, but her heart pounded with the certainty that she had just made a powerful enemy. Yet beneath the anxiety, beneath the fear of the unknown, there was something else. Something that had begun quietly in the elevator lobby and now pulsed stronger inside her chest. Hope. The tiniest flicker of it. Unpredictable, fragile, and completely terrifying. Because for the first time in a very long time, Aaliyah Jones had the feeling that her life had just shifted course. Not gradually, but abruptly, dangerously, as if fate had grabbed her by the hand and yanked her somewhere she wasn't sure she was ready to go. But ready or not, she was already falling into it. Aaliyah's first morning at Hawkins' group unfolded like a test designed by someone who desperately wanted her to fail. The moment she stepped into the secretary bullpen, an open-plan floor, buzzing with phones clacking keyboards, and the faint hiss of the espresso machine, she sensed the tension shift. Heads turned, whispers fluttered like gnats around her, and the air thickened with a hostility she couldn't quite decipher until someone muttered just loud enough for her to hear, "Look, the charity case finally arrived." Another voice chimed in, dripping with faux sympathy. "Must be nice to skip the line and still get hired. Guess good deeds pay off. If you're lucky." Aaliyah ignored them, keeping her shoulders straight, even as her cheeks burned. She'd dealt with worse than snide comments. But the glances, those cold, calculating glances from women dressed in couture and men peering over monitors as if she were an intruder, felt different, purposeful, directed. And when she noticed Anna watching from across the floor, arms folded, eyes glinting like sharpened glass, she understood. This wasn't ordinary workplace friction. This was a warning. Within an hour, the barrage began. Someone forgot to tell her about a schedule change. Another dumped a stack of documents on her desk, with a sugary smile and a whisper, "Mr. Hawkins needs this in 10 minutes. Good luck, rookie." A third shoved past her on purpose, spilling coffee dangerously close to her notes, then laughed as she apologized for a spill she hadn't caused. It escalated quietly, cruelly. "She looks lost. Probably never worked an office job in her life. How does someone like that get hired at Hawkins Connections?" Someone hissed. Or pity. And finally, the one that stung the most. Poor girls shouldn't dream so high. Aaliyah kept her head down and completed every task they threw at her, even the impossible ones. She rearranged schedules on the spot, memorized room codes, helped one frazzled intern fix a printer jam, even though she knew the kindness wouldn't be returned. By noon, her feet ached, her stomach growled, and her pride felt scraped raw. But she was still standing, still fighting. She could endure a day like this. She could endure 100. But what she didn't know was that the real attack was waiting for her later, the kind she couldn't defend, with hard work alone. Late afternoon sunlight filtered through glass walls when the crisis erupted. The lab sent a panicked email to the design wing, urgent ingredient list flagged. Potential contamination. Aaliyah didn't understand the implications until she walked back to her desk and saw Anna standing there holding a printed sheet, her expression carefully crafted into a picture of concern edged with triumph. "Jones," Anna said smoothly, waving the paper. "Care to explain this?" Aaliyah frowned, stepping closer. The document was labeled Formula Revision Batch 7A. Beside one highlighted line, the word mercury trace stood out like a death sentence. "I didn't prepare any formula list," Aaliyah said slowly. "I was filing schedule logs all afternoon." "Interesting," Anna replied, folding the paper, voice icy. "Because the metadata shows it was edited from your workstation less than an hour ago." Aaliyah's heart slammed against her ribs. "That's impossible. I wasn't here." "Oh," Anna turned, addressing the growing crowd. "Then who was?" The other assistants circled like vultures, their eyes filling with vindictive pleasure. Someone whispered, "She came from nowhere, and now she wants to sabotage the company." Another scoffed, "Of course. What better way to climb up than to ruin others?" Aaliyah felt the floor tilt beneath her. She'd never even opened the formula files. She barely knew how to navigate the company server. But the room offered no mercy. And then Ethan walked in. His presence sucked the oxygen out of the space as sharply as an open vacuum. People straightened automatically. Several assistants froze mid-whisper. Anna's expression shifted into feigned professionalism. Aaliyah wished she could disappear. Ethan's eyes moved from Anna to the paper she held, then to Aaliyah, who stood stiff pale, her hands clenching her folder as if letting go would shatter her. "What's happening?" he asked, voice quiet but dangerous. Anna stepped forward. "Mr. Hawkins, we've discovered unauthorized alterations to one of our formula documents." Mercury was added. The file was edited at Miss Jones's workstation. A ripple of shock traveled across the room. Aaliyah forced herself to speak. "Mr. Hawkins, I didn't touch that file. I swear I didn't. We all saw the timestamp," someone muttered. "She's lying. She probably thought no one would notice. Poisoning a product on day one. Unbelievable." The accusations stabbed her like needles. She opened her mouth again, but Ethan raised a hand, silencing everyone. He stepped closer, studying the printed sheet with an expression so unreadable it made her stomach twist. His silence stretched for several seconds, long enough for doubt to flicker inside her chest, despite her innocence. "If he believes them, I'm finished." Then he spoke. "This file's been tampered with." The room went still. Ethan looked up, his gaze slicing through the crowd. "Badly." Anna blinked, thrown off balance. "Sir, the metadata was manipulated poorly," he finished. "Someone who doesn't understand our system tried to mask the edit. The formatting inconsistencies alone make it obvious." The assistants exchanged confused glances. Anna's expression cracked, the slightest hint of panic surfacing before she smoothed it over. Aaliyah stared at Ethan, breath trapped somewhere in her throat. He noticed. But he wasn't done. "Pull surveillance from this floor," he instructed sharply. "All cameras, all workstations." Panic flickered through the room now. Within minutes, security replayed the footage. And there it was, a shadow slipping into the bullpen, a familiar silhouette leaning over Aaliyah's desk, while she was downstairs delivering mail. A hand plugging a drive into her computer, a file opening, a hurried edit. And then the silhouette turned, and Anna's face appeared unmistakable in her reflection on the monitor screen. A stunned gasp tore through the room. Anna's mouth closed, opened again, like someone drowning. I was verifying something." "Stop," Ethan said, his voice cold enough to freeze steel. "You planted falsified data on a new hire's workstation. You risked the integrity of the company and attempted to destroy an employee's reputation." Anna's face drained of color. "Mr. Hawkins, But he already turned to security. "Escort her out. Effective immediately." Gasps erupted. Someone covered their mouth. Someone else whispered, "Oh my God." 2 guards approached Anna. She stumbled back, protesting weakly, but no one defended her. The same assistants who'd mocked Aaliyah minutes ago suddenly found the floor fascinating. Ethan's gaze swept across them with cutting precision. "And the rest of you," he said, voice low but lethal, "should consider this a reminder. Integrity is not optional at Hawkins Group." Silence swallowed the entire floor. When Ethan finally faced Aaliyah, she stiffened, unsure what expression she was allowed to wear. Gratitude, relief, fear. She felt all of them. But he only said, "You're cleared of all accusations." He hesitated, a rare subtle break in his composure, before adding quietly, almost reluctantly, "You didn't deserve that." Aaliyah's throat tightened so suddenly she couldn't answer. She'd spent years learning how to protect herself, but no one had ever stepped between her and injustice, not like this. And he wasn't just anyone. He was Ethan Hawkins, the man everyone feared, everyone revered, the man who never intervened unless it affected the company's bottom line. Yet today he had defended her, publicly, decisively, and something inside him shifted because of it, though he didn't understand why. As he walked away, his jaw tense, his steps sharper than usual, he tried to rationalize it. She was innocent. It was the right thing to do. Any CEO would have done the same. but the hollow echo of that excuse unsettled him. Because deep down, beneath layers of discipline and control, he knew the truth. He hadn't acted because she was an employee. He had acted because she was Aaliyah. And that realization scared him more than he cared to admit. The fallout from Anna's exposure should have ended things. It should have been the moment she retreated, regrouped, and accepted defeat. But hatred, especially the kind fueled by humiliation, rarely fades quietly. And for someone like Anna, whose pride was built on appearances and power, the idea of being undone by a newcomer like Aaliyah was intolerable. So she waited, watching from the shadows of the company she was no longer part of, bitterness fermenting into something darker. Aaliyah, meanwhile, tried to settle back into routine. After the chaos of her first day, she worked harder than ever, determined not to give anyone new ammunition. She triple-checked schedules, memorized building maps, and learned the preferences of every executive on her floor. But she still carried the weight of being watched. Not by Anna anymore, but by colleagues who now eyed her with a wary mix of resentment and fear, the girl who had survived a storm only because the CEO had intervened. And then there was Ethan. She felt him watching her too, in ways that unsettled her more than the hostility of her coworkers. He didn't hover or interfere, he simply noticed. When she entered the room, when she left, when she struggled but refused help, he noticed. It was subtle, but she felt it, and each time her pulse betrayed her. She tried to ignore it, to bury the butterflies his presence stirred, but that invisible thread between them only grew tighter. She pretended not to sense the shift, but deep down, she knew something was changing quietly, dangerously. It began the evening she received the message. She was sorting mail in the quiet after-hours hush of the 42nd floor when her phone buzzed with a company alert. From executive office. Urgent, please proceed to the Langford Hotel Penthouse, 2301. VIP client arrival. Assist immediately. E.H. Her breath caught. Ethan. The request felt abrupt but not implausible. The company often housed international partners in that hotel, and Ethan never added unnecessary details. His messages were always clipped direct. Still, something about it tugged at her nerves. She read the message again and again. Maybe she hesitated too long, but she eventually gathered her coat and left the building, telling herself she couldn't ignore an order that bore his initials. The Langford's marble lobby glowed with gold light when she arrived, the kind of place where silence felt expensive. A concierge guided her to a private elevator, and with each floor ascending, unease coiled tighter around her ribs. When she reached the penthouse suite, she knocked softly. No answer. She tried again. Still silence. The door surprisingly wasn't locked. Aaliyah stepped inside. The suite was dimly lit, far too quiet for a VIP meeting. No luggage, no attendants, no signs of business. And then she saw him. A man slumped on the sofa, clearly drunk, his shirt half untucked, and his movements sloppy as he lurched to his feet at the sound of her voice. "Sir," she said cautiously, "I'm here to assist." The man blinked at her, unfocused, then stumbled closer. He smelled of expensive whiskey and something sour underneath. Finally he slurred, "They sent someone pretty." Aaliyah backed away instantly. "I'm here for business, if you'll just tell me where the client is." "Come on," he murmured, reaching toward her. "Don't be shy." Panic rippled through her. She darted to the table behind her, grabbing the first object she could, her phone. No signal, no Wi-Fi. The room felt suddenly smaller, walls closing in. The man staggered again, and in a moment of frantic desperation, she grabbed the nearest glass of water, gulping it down, to steady herself, only to realize too late the taste was off. Metallic. Wrong. Her vision blurred instantly, a slow wave rolling through her body, like ink spreading in water. Her limbs weakened. The room tilted. No, not this, not here. Please. She pushed herself away from the man toward the door, but her legs buckled. Her breath came shallow. Her heartbeat slowed. She could barely lift her hand to the handle. Just when the world began to dissolve into darkness, she heard a voice, sharp, furious, cut through the haze. Aaliyah. The door burst open, and Ethan stormed into the suite like a force of nature. He crossed the room in seconds, shoving the drunken man aside without breaking stride. One arm scooped her up effortlessly, his chest solid against her cheek as he lifted her from the floor. Her head drooped against him, her lashes fluttering weakly as she tried to focus on his face. Ethan. Her voice was barely a breath. His heart contracted sharply at the sound. It's okay, he said, but his tone trembled with something raw. I've got you. Stay awake. She couldn't. Her body sagged, consciousness slipping through her fingers like sand. The last thing she felt was Ethan's hand against her cheek, warm and urgent, before everything went dark. When she woke again, it was night. Soft light glowed above her, steady and sterile. The rhythmic beeping of a monitor pulsed gently in the background. Aaliyah blinked, vision slow to sharpen, until she realized she was lying in a hospital bed, wrapped in clean sheets, an IV dripping beside her. And then she saw him. Ethan sat in a chair pulled close to her bed, elbows on his knees, head bowed in his hands. His suit jacket was tossed carelessly onto the couch, his tie-crooked hair slightly disheveled, signs of a man who hadn't moved in hours. But what struck her most was his eyes when he finally looked up. They were red, tired, and filled with an emotion she'd never imagined he could feel for her. Relief, anger, fear. You scared the hell out of me, he said, voice low and rough. She opened her mouth, but no words came out, only a tiny, shaky breath. And then the tears came, silent at first, then unstoppable. Her chest tightening with the weight of everything she had tried to hold in. The fear, the confusion, the moment she thought she wouldn't wake again. Ethan rose instantly, leaning over her, his hand hovering before settling gently on her shoulder. You're safe, he said, softer now. I'm here. I'm not leaving. She turned her face toward him, the tears warm on her cheeks. I didn't know. I thought something terrible was going to happen. Nothing happened, he said firmly. I got there in time. She swallowed hard. How did you know I was there? His jaw clenched. Because I never sent that message. Silence pressed between them, heavy with meaning. Ethan breathed in slowly, trying to steady himself before he continued. Security flagged activity from an unregistered device, sending executive-tagged orders. When they traced the location, and I saw your name in the logs. He looked away, his voice fraying at the edges. I've never run so fast in my life. Aaliyah stared at him, stunned, not by the danger she'd been in. She knew that part, but by the depth of emotion etched across Ethan's usually stoic features. This was a man who ruled through composure, who never let anything breach the hard lines of control he built around himself. And yet here he was shaken. For her, she whispered, "Thank you." He shook his head, eyes darkening with something fierce. I'll never let anyone touch you, not while I'm breathing. The world blurred again, this time from emotion, not chemicals. Because in that moment, she felt it clearly, the invisible line between them had snapped. No longer a thread, a pull, a gravity, something neither of them could deny any longer. Ethan brushed a loose curl from her cheek, his touch feather light, but charged with electricity. She trembled not from fear, but from the overwhelming realization that this man, this impossible, unreachable man, felt something for her, something he couldn't hide anymore. And though neither spoke the words, the truth settled silently between them, warm and terrifying and undeniable. Their hearts had crossed a boundary that neither of them would ever be able to retreat from again. A week after the night at the hospital, the atmosphere between Ethan and Aaliyah had shifted into something quiet but unmistakable. They never spoke about what happened. Not the fear he felt, carrying her in his arms. Not the trembling way she had held onto his sleeve when she thought she might still be in danger. But that moment lived between them, like a fragile flame neither dared name. Yet everything changed the morning Ethan stepped into her workspace, with a calmness that didn't match the intensity in his eyes. He didn't look like a CEO about to give an order. He looked like a man who had made a decision, one he wasn't willing to reconsider. "Aaliyah," he said gently, interrupting her as she organized files. She looked up startled, brushing a curl behind her ear. "Yes, sir." He hesitated. Ethan Hawkins never hesitated. "I want you to take a break from assistant duties." Her heart dropped. For a second she thought he was gently trying to push her out after everything she'd endured. Maybe he thought she couldn't handle the pressure anymore. She swallowed hard. If I'm underperforming, I can do better. I don't want to cause trouble, or no." His voice softened. "It's not punishment. It's a transition." "Into what design?" She froze. The word hit her like a spark. "Design," she echoed, confused. "I only studied at a community program. I don't have a degree. People here, they come from big schools. I don't belong in that league." Ethan stepped closer, lowering his voice so it became something intimate, something only meant for her. "You belong exactly where your talent takes you." She blinked, stunned. "But how can you be so sure?" He held her gaze with unwavering certainty. "Because I've seen the way you look at details others treat as background. I saw your notes, your sketches from the fragrance meeting. You see shape, structure, emotion. You don't learn that from degrees, you're born with it." Her breath caught. No one in her life had ever spoken about her talent with such conviction. She had worked hard, yes, every night, sketching by lamplight in her tiny apartment, dreaming of designing something beautiful someday. But dreams had always stayed just that. Until now. "Trust me," Ethan murmured. "Try the design department. If you don't shine there, I'll take responsibility." Something warm spread quietly through her chest. Not just hope, not just excitement. Something more dangerous, something tender. She nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll try." And so the 3-day internal competition began, an annual tradition at Hawkins Group, but this time with stakes far higher than anyone realized. The challenge redesigned the packaging for the company's best-selling product, a sleek but outdated bottle Ethan wanted, rejuvenated to match a new era. Designers rushed like storm currents through the department, sketching, arguing, layering prototypes with nervous intensity. But Aaliyah didn't rush. She sat at her new desk, pencil steady, eyes focused. She drew the first line, then another, then for hours more, again and again, until lunchtime blurred into midnight. She barely slept, barely ate. The world shrank to graphite strokes and color palettes, to the way light could ripple across a bottle, to the way water, clarity, purity, softness could be captured in shape. And somewhere deep inside her, something opened, as though she'd been waiting her whole life to finally breathe. By the 3rd day, she had built something she was proud of. Her original concept was simple, white, minimalistic, clean. But after her hospital night, she found herself drawn to designs that held more emotion. She wanted something alive, something fluid, something that looked like the way Ethan's voice sounded when he whispered, "You're safe now." And so she created a second version, more daring, more luminous. A transparent bottle with rippling water textures embedded inside the glass, a subtle glow that shifted depending on the angle of light. It felt honest, It felt like her. But she kept both versions in her folder, unsure which one to present. That was her mistake. Because while she rinsed her face in the restroom, fighting exhaustion, someone slipped quietly inside the empty design room. Someone with a bitter smile and nails sharp enough to draw blood from fate itself. Anna. She wasn't supposed to be in the building. Security had revoked her badge. But hatred made people clever, and Anna was far more desperate than anyone realized. She rifled through drawers until she found what she wanted. Aaliyah's pristine original sketch, the minimalist white bottle. It was perfect, elegant, easy to pass off as her own. She photographed it, traced it, and reproduced it with minor adjustments she hoped would hide the theft. Then she slid back into the shadows, a satisfied chill curling through her veins. Let's see how Ethan reacts when the girl he favors becomes a liar. The day of presentation arrived. The conference room filled with executives, designers, and tension that coiled like wire. Anna appeared as though she still belonged there. Chin-lifted smile, flawless, wearing entitlement like perfume. And in her hands, Aaliyah's stolen design, printed luxuriously on thick white board. Aaliyah felt her stomach drop the moment she saw it. The same delicate lines, the same minimalist layout. Her work, her design, displayed under Anna's name. For a second, she couldn't breathe. The betrayal was a physical thing, sharp, suffocating. And across the room, she saw Ethan watching Anna. But he wasn't impressed. He was silent. Too silent. His jaw tightened. His eyes darkened. He had seen this design before in Aaliyah's folder. Slowly, he turned to her. "Your submission," he said calmly, but there was something dangerous beneath the surface. "Present it." Everyone stared at her. She felt the weight of 100 eyes pressing expectation and doubt onto her shoulders. She could hear whispers, accusations forming before she even spoke. Did she copy Anna? Is she trying to pull rank because the CEO favors her? This is going to be a disaster. But Aaliyah didn't fold. She inhaled once quietly, then reached into her portfolio, not for the stolen design, for the second one. The one she created when she finally allowed herself to feel. She stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "This is my final concept," she said, projecting the redesigned bottle onto the screen. The room gasped, audible shock rippling like a wave. The bottle shimmered in the projection. Water-textured grooves curved organically along the sides, catching the light, as though the design itself were glowing. It looked alive, dynamic, luxurious, without pretension, like liquid beauty frozen in motion. Ethan's eyes widened, the faintest trace of awe, softening the sharp lines of his face. Even the toughest designers leaned in murmuring appreciation. One whispered, This is art." Another, "Damn. This could win awards." Anna's face drained of color. Ethan stepped forward, his voice carrying absolute authority. The winning design. Aaliyah Jones. Aaliyah's breath hitched. She had expected maybe approval, maybe a nod. But this was a declaration. Ethan held her gaze, something warm and proud, flickering like a secret between them. "Her design reflects both emotional intelligence and innovation," he said. "It captures movement, purity, and identity. This," he gestured to the screen, "is the future of Hawkins Group." Anna tried to speak, but her voice cracked. "But that's unfair, mine. Yours." Ethan's tone chilled the room. "Your submission matches a design that was sketched days earlier in Aaliyah's workspace." Gasps echoed again. Anna stepped back. Ethan's gaze hardened. "You are not part of this company. And after what you've done, you never will be again. Security will escort you out." Anna froze, lips trembling, but it was useless. 2 guards stepped forward. She was finished. As they took her by the arms, she sent Aaliyah one last look, not of hatred this time, but of fear. Because the girl she thought she could crush had become something much bigger, someone untouchable. When the doors closed, Ethan exhaled slowly, eyes returning to Aaliyah. There was pride there, and admiration, and something deeper he didn't dare name, not yet. She stood speechless, her heart pounding with disbelief, gratitude, and a rising swirl of emotion she couldn't control. Because for the first time in her life, someone powerful didn't just protect her. He believed in her. He lifted her. He saw her. And Aaliyah realized with quiet certainty that she was no longer merely surviving this world. She was beginning to shine in it. Rumors had a way of spreading inside Hawkins' group like perfume, soft at first, then suffocating once everyone breathed it in. Ever since the design competition, Aaliyah had felt the shift. People stopped whispering when she entered a room. Some smiled too politely. Others avoided her altogether. A few didn't bother to hide their sneers. The CEO's little pet. No wonder she won, she knows how to climb. A homewrecker with talent is still a homewrecker. The words stung more than she would ever admit. She tried to ignore them, bury her focus in work, but gossip seeped beneath skin like cold water. It didn't matter how hard she tried to stay professional. Every glance felt like judgment, every silence like accusation. And Ethan noticed. Of course he noticed. He was too perceptive when it came to her, in ways that both warmed and terrified her. His voice always softened when he addressed her now. He lingered near her desk longer than necessary. His eyes held questions he wasn't ready to ask aloud. Their connection, whatever it was, had become too real, too quickly, like a flame growing faster than the air could contain. She didn't know what to call it. She only knew she felt it too. But everything shattered the morning a stranger arrived. The lobby was buzzing when Aaliyah walked in. Security tense employees gathered, tension crackling like electricity. A woman stood in the center of the marble floor, poised and immaculate in a white coat, sunglasses, hiding half her face, yet somehow making her appear even more startling. When she saw Aaliyah, she stepped forward with the confidence of someone who owned the world. "You," she said, voice sharp and cool. "Are you the girl everyone keeps mentioning? The one working so closely with my husband?" Aaliyah froze. "You're..." "What? My husband?" The woman removed her sunglasses with a slow, intentional motion. Her eyes were cold, beautiful, deadly. "Ethan Hawkins." A ripple of shock spread through the crowd. Someone gasped. Someone whispered, "I knew it." Aaliyah felt her stomach drop, the floor tilt beneath her feet. She wanted to laugh, to deny it, to say this had to be a misunderstanding. But the woman's tone, her certainty, her elegance, it didn't feel like a lie. Before she could speak, Ethan's voice cut through the air like a blade. "What are you doing here, Julia?" The woman. Julia turned. Ethan stepped forward, expression composed, but simmering with a quiet fury Aaliyah had never seen directed at anyone else. "You can't keep pretending I don't exist," Julia said. "You may have forgotten our arrangement, but I haven't." "Arrangement," Aaliyah whispered, barely managing the word. Ethan's shoulders tensed. He looked at her, then only her, and something heavy flickered across his face. Guilt, regret, and something deeper, almost painful. "Let's talk privately," he said to Julia, but she shook her head. "No. You owe her the truth as much as you owe me." For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he exhaled, slow, controlled, but she could tell his composure was cracking. He turned to Aaliyah, voice low. Let's go upstairs. The walk to his office felt endless. The door clicked shut behind them, sealing them into a silence so thick it pressed against her ribs. Aaliyah didn't sit. She couldn't. Her hands were trembling. "Is it true?" She asked, the words barely audible. Ethan didn't look away. He didn't lie. 3 years ago, he began, "I signed a marriage contract with Julia." He said it calmly, clinically, but the reality of it crashed into her like a wave. Why, she whispered, her throat tight. "Because my grandfather required stability before transferring the inheritance. He believed a spouse would help anchor the company's future." His voice softened, defensive almost. It wasn't romantic. It wasn't real. It was simply strategic. Aaliyah stared at him, struggling to piece the truth together, and she agreed. "It benefited her too," Ethan said quietly. "She wanted the status, the connections. We signed a 3-year agreement to maintain appearances when necessary. But after the first few months, Julia disappeared. Completely. She cut ties, left without warning. No contact. No updates. Nothing." His jaw tightened with a bitterness he rarely showed. "She walked away from the contract, but the marriage paperwork, it remained. Technically, legally, we're still married." The world blurred for a second. Aaliyah felt heat behind her eyes, not from tears, but from disbelief. Anger. Confusion. The man who had saved her, fought for her, believed in her, had been hiding something this monumental. "Why didn't you tell me?" she asked, voice strained. "When would I have told you?" Ethan shot back, frustration bleeding through. "When you nearly died in the hotel. When you were working overnight on your designs. When I was trying not to make things harder for you." His voice lowered, rough with honesty. "I didn't tell you because the moment I realized how I felt about you, the marriage became a problem I couldn't bear acknowledging." Aaliyah's breath caught. "How you felt?" Ethan silenced himself before the words tumbled out, but the meaning lingered. Heavy, real, dangerous. She swallowed. And now Ethan stepped closer slowly, as though approaching something fragile. Now he murmured, "I want to end it. Completely. Cleanly. Permanently." Her heart thudded painfully. She wanted to believe him. She wanted so badly to believe this wasn't another illusion, another deception wrapped in kindness. But before she could speak, he added softly, "There's something else you need to know." Her stomach dropped again. "What?" Slowly, hesitantly, she confessed. 3 years ago, I signed something too." Ethan's brows drew together. "What do you mean?" "A fake marriage," she whispered, ashamed to even admit it. "I was helping a family friend stay in the country. It was supposed to be temporary. He promised he would finalize the divorce within a year." She let out a shaky breath. "But he vanished. I haven't heard from him since." Ethan stared at her, stunned into silence. They stood there facing each other, two people who'd grown close enough to touch hearts, only to discover entire histories lying between them like landmines. 2 fake marriages. 2 unfinished pasts. 2 secrets colliding at the exact moment their feelings had begun to bloom. Aaliyah gave a small, disbelieving laugh. "This is insane," she whispered. "Absolutely insane." Ethan didn't laugh. He didn't look confused. He looked relieved, understanding her in a way she hadn't expected. "Then, we're the same," he said softly. "Both stuck in shadows we didn't choose." She lifted her eyes to his. Something inside her shifted, fragile, but undeniable, like a truth finally clearing from fog. Ethan stepped closer, slow and deliberate, until the distance between them felt like a held breath. "Aaliyah," he whispered, his voice warm enough to melt the last of her fear. "I want to end everything that came before. The contract, the lies, the people who walked away. His eyes softened, grew vulnerable. I want a beginning with you. One that's real, clean, undeniable. Her heart leapt, terrified and hopeful all at once. Ethan. He took her hand gently, reverently, like she was something precious he wasn't sure he deserved. Say you'll let me fix this, he murmured. Say you'll wait for me to make us possible. She didn't trust her voice, so she nodded, tiny, trembling, but true. And Ethan exhaled like he'd been holding his breath for weeks. For the first time, they were no longer circling around their feelings. They were standing in the center of them, complicated, messy, impossible, and absolutely terrifyingly real. Chaos rarely announces itself. It arrives quietly, slipping into cracks of ordinary days until suddenly everything collapses. For Aaliyah, that moment came on a gray afternoon when she left the design floor with her sketchbook tucked under her arm, thinking only about color palettes and the soft flutter in her chest whenever Ethan's name crossed her mind. She didn't notice the footsteps behind her until it was too late. A hand grabbed her from behind, yanking her into a service stairwell. The door slammed shut, swallowing her gasp. Standing in front of her, eyes wild with a manic shine, was Anna. Her hair was unkempt, mascara streaked, an unhinged smile twisting her once charming face. You took everything from me, she hissed. Aaliyah froze. Anna, please, don't say my name. Anna's voice cracked, a brittle blend of fury and despair. Ethan used to trust me. Listen to me. Look at me. I mattered here. And then you, she jabbed a finger toward Aaliyah's chest. You appeared, and suddenly I'm invisible. None of that was my fault. Aaliyah whispered, trying to keep her voice calm, trying to slow the trembling of her hands. Anna laughed, a sharp, broken sound. Of course it is. You stole his attention, the design victory, the reputation, everything I spent years building. Her breath hitched, growing ragged. And now he looks at you like you're something precious, something he'd bleed for. Her expression twisted with a fresh wave of resentment. Do you know what it's like to watch the man you love choose someone like you? Aaliyah felt her heart pound against her ribs. I didn't take him from you. Ethan and I, shut up. Anna lunged, grabbing Aaliyah by the collar and shoving her backward. Aaliyah stumbled, her heel catching on a step. She tumbled down the short flight, landing hard on her side. Pain shot through her abdomen, sharp breath stealing. Something felt wrong deep inside her, something that made her curl instinctively, one hand clutching her stomach. Anna approached slowly, breathing unsteadily, picking up a metal object, a stray piece of equipment abandoned on the stair. She lifted it shakily, her knuckles white. No more second chances for you, she murmured. No more sympathy. No more Ethan. Aaliyah squeezed her eyes shut. Her heart thudded, fear mixing with another ache, deeper, more primal, radiating from her center. She barely registered the stairwell door bursting open until she heard Ethan's voice, raw and furious. Anna, don't. Aaliyah opened her eyes in time to see Ethan sprint down the stairs faster than she'd ever seen him move. Anna swung the object, but Ethan threw himself in front of Aaliyah, shielding her with his body. The impact never reached her. Ethan wrested the object from Anna's trembling hands and tossed it aside. Security stormed in seconds later, pulling Anna away as she screamed, her voice cracking under madness. Ethan didn't look at her. He didn't spare her a fraction of his attention. He was already on his knees beside Aaliyah. Aaliyah, hey, look at me. I'm here. His hands hovered over her, terrified to touch her, yet unable to keep distance. Tell me where it hurts. She tried to speak, but the pain sharpened again, stealing her breath. Ethan's face drained of color. He scooped her into his arms, holding her like she was something fragile, irreplaceable. I've got you, he whispered, voice shaking. "I've got you. Just stay with me." The ambulance lights smeared red against the world as he carried her outside. He refused to let anyone else hold her. Even when paramedics urged him to step back, he stayed pressed against the stretcher, gripping her hand like an anchor. At the hospital, everything blurred. Doctors rushing bright lights clipped medical terms Ethan couldn't process. He wasn't allowed inside the operating room. A nurse gently held his arm. "Sir, please, you need to wait." He stood there frozen until the doors shut in his face. And then he broke. He sank into a waiting room chair, elbows on his knees, fingers digging into his hair. His breath came quick and uneven, nothing like the composed titan the world knew. He had conquered boardrooms, battles of inheritance, billion-dollar negotiations, but none of it mattered when the woman he loved lay behind those doors hurting because he hadn't protected her soon enough. When the doctor finally emerged, Ethan jumped to his feet, his voice cracking. Is she okay?" "She's stable," the doctor said gently. Ethan sagged against the wall in relief until the doctor added, "But I'm afraid there's something else." Ethan straightened, every muscle tightening. "What?" "She was 2 months pregnant." The world stopped. He stared at the doctor, uncomprehending. Pregnant. The word felt foreign on his tongue, too fragile, too monumental. "Yes," the doctor continued softly. "The trauma caused a miscarriage. There was nothing we could have done." Ethan's vision blurred. A sharp ache tore through his chest. He tried to speak, tried to form any sound, but nothing came out. He pressed a hand to his mouth, shaking, fighting everything inside him that was breaking open. The doctor rested a hand on his shoulder. "She doesn't know yet. We didn't tell her. She was unconscious." Ethan lowered his head. His breath came in shudders, and then quietly, painfully, he cried. The kind of sound a man makes when he loses something he didn't know he desperately wanted, until the moment it slipped from his grasp. His hands covered his eyes, but nothing could hide the agony rippling through him. Because for all his restraint, for all his ice-cold composure, Aaliyah had melted him. And the child he never knew existed, the possibility he didn't even imagine, had been stolen in seconds. He knew he had to be strong for her. He knew she would collapse if she learned she'd lost a child she didn't know she carried. So he made a decision, not as a CEO, not as a strategist, but as a man who loved her more than his own heart. He would carry this pain for both of them. Hours passed before Aaliyah stirred in her hospital bed. Her lashes fluttered. Her fingers twitched. Ethan was instantly by her side. The moment her eyes opened, she saw him. His expression exhausted, vulnerable, but overflowing with relief. So intense, it nearly broke her anew. "You're okay?" he whispered, brushing a stray curl away from her face. "Thank God. You're okay." Aaliyah swallowed, her voice barely there. "Ethan, what happened?" "You fell," he said gently. "You're bruised, but you're safe now." He didn't mention the rest. His thumb grazed her cheek with a tenderness so raw she almost cried. Her gaze dropped to his shirt, creased, stained, his tie abandoned somewhere. He looked like he hadn't slept, like he'd fought through hell itself. "You stayed," she whispered. "I'll always stay." His voice trembled, thick with emotion he no longer tried to hide. He took her hand, lifting it to his lips. "Aaliyah, I thought I lost you." Her eyes softened, filling with something deep and warm. She squeezed his fingers weakly. "I'm still here." Ethan leaned forward, his forehead resting lightly against hers. His breath trembled. "I love you." The words slipped out, unfiltered, unstoppable. They shook with truth. Aaliyah's heart stuttered. He continued, voice raw. "I don't care about the past, The contracts, the mistakes. I just care about you. I'll protect you. I'll fight for you. I'll burn the whole world down if it keeps you safe. Tears pooled in her eyes, slipping down her cheeks. She lifted her hand to his jaw, tracing the stubble roughening his skin. Ethan. He kissed her forehead, soft, reverent, a promise made in silence. You're not alone. Not anymore. In that small white hospital room, lit by soft monitors and moonlight slipping through blinds, something irreversible happened between them. Not just love, a vow. The kind only forged when two lives survived something that nearly tore them apart. A vow that nothing and no one would come between them again. The days after the hospital felt fragile, as if the world were made of thin glass, and one wrong breath could shatter everything. Aaliyah recovered slowly, her body healing faster than the quiet ache in her heart she couldn't name. Ethan never left her side. He handled meetings from the hospital chair, paced the hallway during her checkups, and hovered near her bed with a tenderness that stripped away the cold edges the world believed he possessed. But beneath all of it lay a weight neither of them voiced, their unresolved pasts, their fake marriages still lingering like ghosts between them. Ethan had promised he would fix it. And he did. His lawyers worked with an urgency that matched the beat of his heart. Phone calls at dawn, documents rushed across states' old court files, pulled from archives. Every piece of their tangled histories laid bare, dissected and evaluated. Then, one morning, with winter sun pouring through the hospital windows, Ethan walked into Aaliyah's room, holding a slim folder. She felt the change in him instantly. Something lighter, something hopeful, quietly burning behind his eyes. He sat beside her, opened the folder, and spoke in a low, steady voice. They found everything. Her heart tightened. The marriages. He nodded. Neither was ever real. She blinked, unsure she heard correctly. Ethan handed her the papers. Julia never filed the documents with the clerk's office. Our signatures, they meant nothing legally. We were never married. He watched her carefully, as though afraid she might misunderstand. It's over, Aaliyah. Completely. Aaliyah exhaled shakily, relief washing over her in warm waves. But Ethan wasn't finished. And yours, he continued gently, was also invalid. The person you helped, he used a falsified ID. The contract never passed verification. The law labeled the entire transaction void. Her eyes widened. So, I'm not married, Ethan finished softly. No, you haven't been for a single day. She didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until tears blurred her vision. Not because she had wanted the fake bond to matter, but because she finally understood she wasn't bringing a broken, complicated past into whatever she and Ethan could become. She was free, and so was he. Then she hesitated, afraid to hope too quickly. Ethan reached for her hand, threading his fingers through hers, with a gentleness that contradicted every rumor about him. We're two people without anything holding us back, he murmured. Two people who survive too much to pretend we don't know what we want. His thumb brushed the back of her hand, slow and reverent. And what I want is you. From that moment forward, something shifted permanently between them. No more fear, no more hesitation, only a quiet certainty that moved through their days like a new pulse. Ethan helped her walk for the first time after the incident, his hand steady on her waist. She'd blush every time he tucked a blanket around her shoulders or adjusted her pillows. He'd smile every time she whispered his name. And though neither spoke the words out loud again, they both felt that love had carved itself so deeply into them that there was no way back. A week after she was discharged, Ethan asked her to meet him at the Hawkins estate. He didn't explain why. He only told her to come at sunset. When she arrived, The house was silent. The butler greeted her with a knowing smile and led her down a hallway she had never walked before toward a door left slightly ajar. Lavender, soft, sweet, unmistakable, drifted through the air. Aaliyah stepped inside, and her breath left her. The room was transformed into a dream. Hundreds, no thousands of lavender branches hung from the ceiling in delicate arcs, casting soft purple shadows against the walls. Petals lay scattered across the floor like fallen stars. Candles flickered between the flowers, warm like dusk made tangible. At the center of the room stood Ethan in a charcoal suit, his expression gentle, hopeful, more vulnerable than she had ever seen. Her hands flew to her mouth. "Ethan," she whispered. He stepped forward, eyes never leaving hers. "Do you know why I chose lavender?" She nodded slowly. "It's my favorite." "Yes," he said softly, "and it's always been your color. Calm, strong, and quietly unforgettable." Aaliyah felt tears already burning behind her eyes. Ethan reached into his pocket, pulling out a small velvet box. But he didn't open it. Not yet. He held it in his palm as he spoke, voice low and sincere. "You didn't just walk into the elevator that morning," he said, taking another slow step toward her. "You walked into my life, into a space I never let anyone touch. I was cold, distant, convinced nothing could change me." His voice trembled. "But then I saw you defend my grandfather without hesitation. I saw you fight for your dignity, survive cruelty, shine through it. You made me feel Aaliyah, really feel, for the first time in years." Her tears fell soft and uncontrollable. Ethan finally opened the box. The ring inside was simple, elegant, a single diamond, resting in a cradle of white gold, shaped like two interlocking curves, two paths converging into one. "In all my life," he whispered, "I've never wanted anything the way I want a future with you." He lowered to one knee, Ethan Hawkins, the man half the world feared, kneeling not with arrogance, but with devotion. "Aaliyah Jones," he said, his voice breaking with emotion, "will you become my wife? Not by contract, not by expectation, but by choice. Mine and yours." Aaliyah covered her mouth with trembling hands. She sobbed, not from pain, not from fear, but from a joy so overwhelming it felt like her chest might burst. Behind Ethan, near the doorway, stood William Hawkins. His arms were folded, eyes shining with pride and mischief. When she looked at him, he winked, as if to say, "I knew this from the start." Aaliyah turned back to Ethan, tears streaming, smile shaking. "Yes," she whispered, voice cracking beautifully. "Yes, Ethan. I want to marry you." Ethan stood, exhaling a breath he didn't realize he'd been holding, and pulled her into his arms. The kiss he placed on her forehead was soft, trembling, full of gratitude and promise. William clapped loudly from behind them. "About time," he laughed, wiping the corner of his eye. "Now, how soon can I expect great-grandchildren?" Ethan groaned. Aaliyah burst into laughter. They married a month later in a private ceremony filled with lavender and white roses. Ethan couldn't take his eyes off her. Aaliyah couldn't stop smiling, even as tears kept slipping down her cheeks. When the officiant asked Ethan if he took Aaliyah as his wife, he didn't say, "I do," right away. He said, "I always have." The world changed for them after that. Aaliyah became the youngest creative director in Hawkins Group history, her designs redefining the company's identity. People who once mocked her now whispered in awe, and Ethan, once the man known as a stone-hearted CEO, became someone unrecognizable. He laughed more, smiled more, held Aaliyah's hand openly, looked at her like she was the only person who had ever mattered. And sometimes late at night he'd whisper against her hair, "All of this began the moment you stepped into that elevator." She would smile, curl into him, and answer, I guess fate knows how to press elevator buttons too. Their love story didn't start with perfection. It started with chaos, misunderstanding, pain, and a stolen chance that grew into destiny. And in the end, everything they had survived only made the sweetness richer. Because love, real love, was born the moment two strangers collided in a crowded elevator and changed each other's lives forever. The end.